The liberation of Donbass. After 5 months of intense fighting, Russian forces are in the final stages of clearing out Ukrainian regulars and paramilitaries from the Donbass in eastern Ukraine and liberating the civilian population who have been subjected to 8 years of violence, resulting in approximately 15,000 deaths. The progress may appear to have been slow, but it's been a consistent grind as the Russians advance relentlessly. All Ukrainian counteroffensives have failed. Despite some local successes, they haven't been able to hold on to any territory. Most of Ukraine's best units are based in the Donbass, where they've been entrenched in a network of fortifications built over the last 8 years. These units have been trained and equipped by NATO. The Russians are close to defeating the final Ukrainian strongholds, and the proverbial dam is about to be breached. And when this happens, the road is open all the way to the Dnieper River and beyond. Will the Russians invade all of Ukraine? I don't know. But I do know they will dictate the terms no matter what, as the Zelensky regime have lost all leverage for any possible negotiated peace, since they've wasted all their bargaining chips. Contrary to the narrative, this war in Ukraine didn't start 5 months ago. No. It began 8 years and 5 months ago, almost to the day. Following years of fighting and failed negotiations, Russia was left with no option but to intervene directly and put an end to this mess created by the Western globalist ruling class and their relentless drive to control the entire planet and impose a one-world government. The Donbass republics of Luhansk and Donetsk refused to be ruled by an Atlanticist puppet regime in Kiev, which had just been installed by the Atlanticist powers in 2014, as part of their plan to co-opt the Ukraine and turn the country into a hostile neighbor to Russia, whom the collective West are desperate to neutralize, colonize, or destroy, no matter what the cost. After their failure to hijack Russia and plunder its resources, turning it into yet another vassal during the 1990s, the Atlanticists have been tirelessly planning the destruction of Russia as revenge for their humiliation at the hands of Putin, who outmaneuvered not only foreign individuals, entities, and NGOs, but domestic oligarchs, as he helped free Russia from these parasites. Expanding NATO has been part of their strategy. This was done successfully in the Baltics, but failed in Georgia, culminating in a short but decisive war, which should have acted as a warning to Washington and other countries on Russia's periphery who were considering membership with an alliance whose sole purpose is to antagonize and ultimately defeat Russia. The Georgian-Russia War was a precursor and a beta version of the current conflict we are witnessing in Ukraine. Despite this, the Atlanticist powers moved forward with their project by funding the Maidan Revolution in Kiev for the purpose of bringing Ukraine under their control and laying the foundations for a military offensive that would drive into Russia across the southern steppes, all the way to the Kazakh border, effectively cutting off the Caucasus, a significant oil-producing region of Russia, putting the Federation in a very precarious position. Moscow knew this, which is one of the reasons they sent military aid and supported the anti-Kiev Donbass militias in eastern Ukraine. This region was geographically very important, as it is on the border of one of Russia's most vulnerable locations, as it protrudes deep into Russia's southwestern frontier. If it were seized by Ukrainian forces, it would be the staging ground for an invasion of southern Russia. If we go back to World War II, the Germans had the same strategy. In their renewed summer offensive of 1942, German forces launched an attack towards Stalingrad with the same intention to cut off and deny Russian access to the oil fields of the Caucasus, which would have ended the war in Germany's favor. The Russians, of course, tried to stop them in the Ukraine and fought fiercely, but they couldn't defeat the Germans in open combat, so they gave up territory and drew them into Stalingrad, and the rest is history. The point is, they made the Germans fight for every inch of the Ukraine, which the Germans did eventually succeed in occupying, albeit at great cost. However, fast forward to 2014, and Ukraine joining NATO, which would mean Russia's enemies wouldn't even need to fight in order to occupy the same territory the Germans did some 72 years earlier, putting them within striking distance of the Volga River and less than 300 miles from the Kazakh border. The flat open steppes of southern Russia is ideal tank country and perfect for an all-out assault. This is exactly what the Ukrainians were preparing for as they assembled their armies in the east. building up a strike force to annihilate the LPR and DPR armed forces, and then proceed across the border, taking on the Russians in their own territory. However, the Russians beat them to the punch when they launched their special military operation on the 24th of February. It was a preemptive strike, and had they not done this, and simply sat back in the hope that the Atlanticists would not attack, it would have put them on the back foot and at a disadvantage if a NATO-directed Ukrainian invasion of Russia was actually launched. The Donbass has been the battlefield of the globalists and Russia for the last 8 years. This region of around 4.5 million people has been subjected to regular shelling and destruction. The only thing that changed was Russia became directly involved and is finally putting this to an end as they expel the last of the Atlanticist-sponsored forces. With key Russian victories in Mariupol, Melitopol, Zaporozhye, Kherson, Severodonetsk, and Lysychansk, the Ukrainians have been unable to stop them, and their last remaining stronghold of any significance in the Donbass is Kramatorsk. When this falls, the Donbass campaign will be over, and the people can live in peace, free from Western influence and oppression. Eastern Ukraine will either be incorporated into the Russian Federation or become fully independent states. So what's next? Russia's Foreign Minister Lavrov just announced that the operation is no longer limited to the Donbass. In other words, Russia will continue with its conquest of Ukraine, and with current attrition rates, nothing can stop them. The collective West would need to pour in hundreds of thousands of men and military hardware, which is very unlikely. It's also important to note that Russia has only been fighting at 20% capacity, and with Ukraine's best defenses eliminated, think how fast the Russian army could move across the rest of the country if they turned up the tempo or just went all out at 100%. My prediction is they would reach the Carpathian Mountains in just a few weeks. Moscow will put an offer on the table, which will be rejected, so fighting will continue until Ukrainian forces have no option but to surrender. When this happens remains to be seen, but they are NATO's best, most battle-hardened, and experienced soldiers. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy this channel and content, please leave a like, share, and sub. And if you really enjoy it, please leave a donation. I accept PayPal and 5 types of crypto. Links in the description. Much appreciated. You can also find me on Odysee, Bitchute, and Rumble, where I will be uploading exclusive content covering topics such as the which would of course get me banned immediately here on YouTube.